The affliction has a purpose. God cares about your character. He cares about what you look like. Do you look like him or do you look like the world? And the way that God forges you, he refines you, the way that God purifies you is through the trials that you face. Many scriptures talk about the purpose of trials. It's so important to know the purpose of trials. James 1:2-4 says to count it all joy because the testing of our faith produces endurance, patience, so that we might be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. 1 Peter chapter 1 says that the refining fire is for the tested genuineness of our faith, which is more precious than gold that perishes, though it's tested by fire. Romans 5 even says that suffering produces endurance, and endurance, character, and character, hope. And hope does not put us to shame because God's love has been poured into our heart through the Holy Spirit, which has been given to us. 2 Corinthians 1, Paul says that the affliction that he went through caused him to despair of life itself. But Paul said that caused me to lean on God, who delivers us from the dead. Another passage in 2 Corinthians 11, Paul had this thorn in the flesh, a messenger of Satan that buffeted him, tormented him. But he said that God was using that to help him understand that God's grace is sufficient and God's power is made perfect in weakness. I just want to encourage you, whatever suffering you're facing, maybe it's in your family, financially, maybe you're feeling distant from God, maybe you're feeling overwhelmed and anxious, depressed and discouraged, whatever it is, just fill in the blank. Think about the affliction that you face at your job, whatever it is. Think about this. If you want to grow in patience, God is going to allow you to be in circumstances where you need to be patient. If you want to grow in wisdom, God's going to put you in situations where there might be hard decisions that you have to make. If you want to grow in godliness, you might be around ungodly people in your workplace so that your light can shine to them. If you want to grow in discipline, God might have you on a tight schedule where you have to manage your time. He might have a lot on your plate so that you can learn to manage your time. Don't complain. The trials that you're going through, the season that you're in, if you want to grow, you need to be stretched. God is stretching you. If you want to grow your muscles, they need to be under strain, under pressure, in order for that muscle to build. The muscle of joy can actually be born and grow stronger through affliction, because you learn to rejoice in the Lord always, no matter what you're going through. The muscle of peace can be grown in chaotic circumstances that aren't peaceful, but you have the peace of God that surpasses understanding because you're going to God in the midst of the storm. Like Jesus was asleep in the storm, you can be at sleep. You can be at peace in the storm. If you want to grow in kindness, there might be someone in your life that treats you unkindly, but God's challenging you to step up and stand out and be kind to your enemy. If you want to grow in these areas, if you want to look like Christ, you have to suffer, and you have to trust God in your suffering. There's no development without suffering. It even says that Jesus learned obedience through the things he suffered. Think about that. Jesus learned obedience through the things he suffered. Through the suffering that Christ had, he was able to grow and learn obedience. And that kind of is a verse that blows your mind because Christ always was obedient, but he developed and grew in wisdom just like us. He grew in favor with God and with man. And just as Jesus had to develop, just like all of us, because he was in this fleshly body, we need to develop. We need to develop. Now, Jesus was fully man and fully God, but yet it says he grew in wisdom. It says that he learned obedience. And even Jesus made time for God in the midst of the suffering. Look at the example of Christ. If Christ could get through that, if Christ could get through the persecution and say, Father, forgive them, if he could say that on the cross, if Christ could handle the rejection, if Christ could go to the cross, what's your excuse? Don't complain in the fire. Let the fire forge you, because if not, you're going to stay stuck in the wilderness. Enter into the promised land. Enter into maturity by embracing suffering with your eyes on Christ. These afflictions, we hate them. We want to run from them, but they're working for our good if we see it rightly. Change your perspective.